Hi, everyone. So as promised, this is another video talking about what needs to go into your lab report, the formal lab report. Um, and I'm also going to talk about some of the features that I'll be looking for that you should be included in any reports in the future for this lab and in your professional careers. Okay, so for the purposes of this course, you'll be writing a formal report for Lab 5 and the final project, which comes at towards the end of the semester. But in this video, what I'm going to do is talk about some of the aspects of the report uh, that you should include. Okay, so first of all, this is sort of an outline of what the report should be like. So you're gonna start with a title, and obviously you're gonna need like even before that a header that has, say, your uh, name, section, date, etc. Right? Um, okay, but you need a title, you need an abstract, an objective, a theory section, which goes over the theory necessary to understand the discussions in this lab report. And particularly, you want to include equations that you can reference in your results and calculations sections. Okay, so this is something that's going to be different from your write-up. It was not part of your write-up. And so yeah, don't forget to include the theory section in your report. Okay, so next thing is procedure. Procedure is basically answering the question, what did you do in this lab? So what steps did you take to complete the experiment? What measurements did you make? What circuits did you build? And so on and so forth. But the key is that you have to state it as what you did and not as what and not instruct the reader to do something. Okay, so answer the question, what did you do, and not what the reader should do. Okay. In the procedure section, the other key part of this is any circuit schematics of any circuit that you built or simulated or designed, it should go into the procedure section. Okay, so this is a must for anytime you're doing an experiment based on a circuit, a schematic needs to be included. In the results and calculations section, obviously you're going to report the measurements from your experiment. You're going to summarize them in plots and figures and tables. You're going to compare them to expected values and calculate errors based on them. And also, you're going to include a short discussion, a 1 or 2 line discussion of what these results actually mean. And there's few questions in the lab manual that's going to guide you to sort of understand the results that you're measuring. And then tie it in with the theory, right? The theory will also come in to play when you're calculating the expected values. But yeah, so the results should sort of play well with both what you measured, what you said you measured in the procedure section, and what you said you expect from the theory section. Okay, and finally, you have the conclusion, where you basically comment on whether or not your experiment was successful, but you need to justify your claim that if it was successful, based on what results and what inferences are you making that claim, right? And whether or not your objectives were met. Well, I guess it's the same thing. But basically, when you're writing this report, just write the report for someone who does not have any clue about your lab manual or your lab tasks, right? So don't reference figures in the lab manual. Include any figures that's essentially important for the discussion within your report. right? And organize the report logically based on topics instead of based on tasks. For instance, task 1 and task 4 of lab 5 are both to do with superposition. So maybe you can group those two tasks as one sub experiment and report it in your report likewise, instead of having a separate procedure for task 1 and task 4 separated by task 2 and task 3 that have nothing to do with superposition, right? So organize it logically based on topics, and include any schematics or images or equations that are pertinent to your discussion within the report, and don't sort of reference figures in the lab manual. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to skip over this. So this is a little template for the report, which I'll be sharing with you guys on Brightspace. But it basically talks about different parts of the report and what it should include. For example, you have a title, and it also gives you a broad points distribution for everything, right? So an abstract is a short summary of your report, which describes the key objectives, methods, and results of the experiments. And yeah, it should be a standalone document that doesn't reference anything within your report. Okay, so the objective will be answering what the technical objectives of your experiments are, not so much the learning objectives of the experiment, right? So frame it as, don't frame it as, say, to learn about superposition, but rather to verify superposition using such and such experiments, right? So a technical objective rather than a learning objective. So if there's multiple logically very distinct parts of your experiment, you can maybe break this objective down into 2 or 3 different parts, each talking about the objectives of that sub-experiment, right? Okay. So the theory section is where you talk about the bulk of the concepts necessary to understand and analyze the discussions in the lab in this report. So you will include equations that pertinent equations, maybe some circuit schematics will be helpful in completing the discussions on those theoretical concepts. Include anything that you need. Whenever you include equations, figures, tables, you always need to have a label, right? So equations can have a label like this. A figure needs to have a label and a descriptive caption that talks about what's shown in the figure. Okay. And then procedure, again, report, don't instruct. You don't want to reference anything in the lab manual. If you need any circuit schematics to aid your discussion, then that should be included in your procedure section. You can list the component values for different parts of your circuit in a table. If you're including a table, give it a reference number and a descriptive caption. If your experiment has logically distinct components, then maybe it's wise to break even the procedure section into different subsegments, right? Each discussing different parts of the experiment. Again, in the results section, you're going to be presenting So in the results section, you're going to be presenting your results. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so in the results section, you're going to present your results. It's best to summarize your results in tables or in plots. And whenever you include table of values, don't forget to include units, right? If it is a measured quantity, then the measurement that you report needs to reflect the precision of your measurement equipment. If you are making plots like these, make sure your plots have X and Y axes and have proper units. Plots also need also figures, so they need a figure number and a descriptive caption. Okay, if you are taking screenshots of, say, oscilloscopes and stuff like that, be sure to identify which signal is what. So for example, here you could say that the yellow signal is the input and the blue signal is the output, now so that the reader doesn't have to guess. And again, if it's like a oscilloscope screenshot, make sure that the scales are visible so that the reader can make quantitative judgments on what your results mean. Okay, and also on the report, you should talk about what these results mean and answer some of the questions posed to you in the lab manual. Okay, and finally, in the conclusion, just summarize the report and remark on whether or not your objectives were met with some justification based on your results. Okay, so that is what your report should look like. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to ping me on Discord or send me an email. So that template will be available to you on Brightspace. So take a look at that and read through it to familiarize yourself with what's expected on the report and what's good practice. Okay, all right, thank you.